Yeah.
Sophia, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I was just thinking in terms of, I completely agree with having a little bit more context around the form, and if there's any sort of like details on what might be more or less manual in the sense of if this is going to be faster or slower for depending on the nature of the project. Just again to set expectations. If someone, I'm assuming like Kubernetes isn't going to show up and say give me a report, because that would drain everything. But if we don't specify that there would be some sort of like delays associated with larger undertakings, or some way to push back and be like, this is actually a lot bigger than you think it is.
Mm-hmm. No, that's fair. And to that point too, Sophia, we're only allowing for one repo at the moment.
Okay.
To be as part of this report, right? Because if Kubernetes stepped in,
said here, do today, but yeah,
do this.
Bad news.
Yeah.
Okay, so just for one repo, that makes a lot of sense.
Yep. It's the hope is just to get people kind of located in a space where they can start understanding what these metrics might mean to them and want to ask more questions, and maybe encourage them to join the CHAOSS project or to work with Cauldron or Grimoire Lab or Augur to dig a little deeper. Cool. Any other comments? Great, thanks everybody. Let's see. In terms of, Daniel, we have the Asia Pacific community call tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. US Central. Is it 8? I think it's 8 a.m. US Central. And Daniel's going to be talking about inner sourcing. Daniel, do you want to, I know we talked about this last week, but just tell us what you're going to be doing.
Yeah, so the idea is to do a brief introduction about inner source, key concepts, and then a bit about inner source commons, the foundation, the community, and finally a bit of metrics around inner source and why people are interested in those. So this is, and then probably some open discussion. So I don't think more than 20, 30 minutes of some briefing and then some open discussion with everyone.
I think there'll be a lot of interest from the Asia Pacific group because they're just starting out.
Yeah, that by the way, on the 15th and 16th of September, so next week, now spam, the Inner Source Commons Summit is taking place, 9 a.m. 9 a.m. noon 30 Pacific time. So you are more than welcome to join, just in case.
Is that a free summit, Daniel?
Can you say again?
Is it free?
We are charging like $35 for a t-shirt or so. If there's anyone with certain issues attending or funding and so on, we are happy to give free tickets.
Okay. And this is the Inner Source Commons. It's the 15th and 16th. Is that what you said? Oh, yeah. You put a link there. Okay, cool.
16th. Oh, let me share the agenda. So it's here. I can share this in chat. So yeah, we have some great people joining. We will have Tim O'Reilly this time. So a great opportunity.
So I know that you have a lot of involvement in Inner Source, and I know that you've been talking about it for a long time in the CHAOSS project. I don't feel that we've ever really kind of given it the view it could have in the CHAOSS project. Do you have thoughts on how we can bring these together? I know you've been thinking about this, or not, or if the work just stays Inner Source Commons and we just have a kind of a common understanding of each other, or if there's something more explicit to be done.
So beyond the goals or community goals that we are trying to achieve in CHAOSS, or people using CHAOSS as a whole, and people trying to run inner source initiatives, the metrics themselves at the very bottom of all of these are quite the same, and technology might be the same as well. So people can use Augur, or people can use Grimoire Lab or Cricket because they are using GitHub Enterprise, GitLab, Atlassian Stack. So they are using pretty similar infrastructure. So it happens that the goals are different. So from that perspective, I think is really interesting for the Inner Source Commons, the way we are approaching metrics, like following the goal question metric approach, having all of these focus areas, working groups, and so on. Because this is, there are other goals, as for instance, fostering collaboration, breaking down silos, doing networking, improving the code review process if there's any within corporations. Some of them are metrics that are already part even of CHAOSS, some of them are not. So I see this way of moving into inner source in that way. The other way around is about inner source may bring other perspectives about the use of metrics and how those can be used typically in corporations, so not in the open source world. So this may help to advance in the understanding and study of metrics. That's all. So all of this I remember from the very beginning when we were writing down the bylaws and all of this around CHAOSS. We were discussing about having the inner source topic within there, but well, we focus at the end on open source, and that's all right. So this is more or less the storyline here.
Yeah, I mean it's a bit outside of the kind of mission vision as it was defined for CHAOSS. But like Daniel said, I mean there's so much overlap and so many metrics in common. I don't know if it would make sense to do more inner source within CHAOSS, or whether it would just make sense to have better, I don't know, better collaboration with inner source commons. I don't know what the right answer is.
Are the metrics different?
Yeah, go ahead, Sean. Sorry.
Are the metrics different? I mean, how substantial are the metrics different?
It is, but once, for instance, just as an example, when people are starting with inner source, they are defining certain projects, and they may start with 10 or 1,000. They are interested in understanding things as popularity or newcomers to the project, or the evolution if this is growing somehow, and the velocity of the development. And these are metrics that we are using in CHAOSS as well. So there is certain overlapping, definitely. So yeah, and I agree with you, Don, that this is a bit out of topic for CHAOSS, but well, so what I'm doing personally is I'm bringing CHAOSS experience into the inner source commons in the sense of how to define or how to use metrics and so on, and the tooling that we have in CHAOSS, etc. Yeah, and from time to time I'm talking about inner source here in CHAOSS.
Yeah, because I think some of the problems are a little bit different, right? I mean, when we talk about open source projects, you're talking about building community, but you're talking about pulling that community from externally, whereas inner source, these repositories are private and it's just from a company, and how much you can pull resources from other groups within your organization tends to get a little bit political. I mean, so the discussions around, I think, interpretation are a lot different.
Yeah.
But like Daniel said, I think a lot of the common metrics, the atomic metrics, are probably the same. But I think that from a, like an internal company standpoint, I think certain things are going to be more important or less important than they would be in an open source project.
Yeah, in any case, probably this is a matter of interest, and so far this is only me in somehow. So if there are 2 or 3 people in the next months, well, the community about bridging both is growing somehow, so that's okay. I just I can keep informing here and there, so that's okay for me.
Sounds good. All right, cool. Got a few notes there. All right, cool. Matt Snell, are you on?
Hi.
Hi. How are you?
I'm good. I'm here to talk about D&I badging today, among other things.
Right on.
We're launching on September 14th, which is next Monday, and we put up kind of a request for reviewers, and we had a lot of people really interested in the project, which is really good. And some of those people were even outside of CHAOSS, which is stellar. We've been having some reviewer kind of orientation sessions to get people acquainted with the program. And the next, there could be one tonight if anybody signs up for it. We haven't had anybody sign up yet, but we have one Friday that a few people are interested in. So there's a sign up sheet I've added here. And I'm going to, and I have, that includes everything you would need to sign up to be a reviewer, and then you go to one of the orientation sessions, and then you'd be a reviewer at launch for the badging program. Yeah, so let me look at my calendar here. The next session is 5 p.m. today, CDT, and then the next one is 12, so an hour after this meeting, but on Friday. So if you're interested in attending any of those, becoming a reviewer or anything like that, let me know through that form. And I think that's it for badging right now. We're just so excited. We're not making any more changes to the documentation or anything like that until we work on the dev branch after launch. We'll have a lot of things to work with, I think. But that's it for now.
How did the session go yesterday?
Really well. We actually it went under 30 minutes, but we got everything. I think I got everything across that I needed to, and we had good discussion. We had questions. We talked about the 2 cats I had in the background, all that stuff, and we had a nice conversation. It was good to have one in the morning, I think, and that's it went well.
Okay. So yesterday, it was the training session for reviewers, just kind of
Yes.
walking them through. How many reviewers are there total at this point that have signed up?
10.
I think 10.
That was our goal, and that's the exact number that we have, so that's nice.
So again, to you, and I don't think Asta's on right now, and everybody who's participated, it's just been an amazing amount of work. So thank you for doing that. I'm really excited. We'll see how it goes. Do you want to share the request link, Matt? I think people might have an
Yeah, it's
interest
under
in seeing
sign
that.
up sheet. Oh, you mean for doodle poll?
No. For just like what people would see when they want to actually try to get a badge for an event.
Oh, yes. Okay.
I actually just shared that in the chat, and I dropped it in the Google Doc
thanks.
as well. So
great. Yeah, that's the update. Thank you for updating that, Kevin. I just noticed that.
no problem.
So I'll share my screen here. So this is what Matt and Asta have been putting together. So the idea is to help with D&I at events, and as this starts rolling out, we'll look at projects as well. So probably not doing an in-person submission at the moment, but for a virtual event. Just asking for, oh, go ahead, Matt.
I can talk about this a little bit. So
yeah,
and generally the people that submit the events to be badged is they've got to be an organizer or some person that's in the organization of the event. And most of the information for reviewing comes out of what the people say, or what you can. Well, all of it comes out of what they say or what you can find on the website, but most of it comes out of what they talk about. There's some things you have to kind of find evidence of, but as you can see, the criteria are now added to the submission form so that you can see what we're looking for when you're submitting an event. Yeah, that's a big new update.
And so at this point, yeah, these criteria that are on here are what the reviewers use to ensure that the submitter is attending to these things. So the review process is really about ensuring that what the applicant says is true and it's discoverable at the event. So I can scroll down a little bit further. And then badges are issued based on a percentage of achieving the criteria.
And even though Asta's not here, I'm going to thank her for making all those bots and the bot changes that we had when we added virtual events and all the things that included bots.
They're recorded, so your thanks are perpetuated through history.
Do people have questions on this or comments?
Would it be helpful to link to the CHAOSS metrics that are being used in this form? For example, diversity access tickets is a CHAOSS metric.
Yeah, I could turn the headers into links if that helps.
I think the
Yep.
code of conduct for event is a CHAOSS metric.
Yeah, these are all CHAOSS metrics.
They all are.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I would have the link pop up in a new window so people aren't going back and forth with the form.
Okay.
A suggestion, just having tried to create links that make sense for my students before.
And +1 to that. Yeah.
Other comments from people? Sophia, it looked like you were going to say something.
Yeah, I was just reading the documentation around demographics because that was going to be my question too. So I like the suggestion to link that in so they have a reference for it. I know I'm a little bit late to this, and I have done some demographic surveys at events, and we've been subject to different layers of PII issues in terms of what we are allowed to ask people. And I'm wondering if there's any guidance around sort of minimum demographic criteria that you suggest to go into this evaluation versus ones that are maybe more or less sensitive that you're either encouraging or having stipulations around acknowledging that this is slightly more sensitive now. That like for an individual, that I think it's slightly different for data collection. For me, representing a large company, there are very serious implications for collecting data like that. So I'm wondering if you have any sort of guidance around various levels of PII.
Sophia, can I ask, because I don't have any experience doing this, is there specific PII that has been troublesome in the past from a corporate perspective?
Yeah, so for the perspective of Google, if I collect sort of more sensitive kinds of PII, I'd see like contact information, actual locations outside of just region, so even individual company. So just kind of the next layer versus like general region, general industry, general role. Then I need to I have to create a process around how I will treat the data to make sure that I'm GDPR compliant, privacy compliant with the event and with the company. So that's company specific policies, but there are certain sort of general gradations of PII levels that get you into more or less trouble. And so things like gender, ethnicity, and more like self-identifying characteristics tend to be more sensitive than I live in Europe.
Yeah, this is one of the reasons that we've talked about needing some kind of ethics guidelines for people around how to treat some of this information, because you don't necessarily think about it as being sensitive in the aggregate, but in a lot of populations, you might not have that many people of a certain type of gender or certain identity, and it becomes identifiable information really quickly, and you can figure out exactly who that person was if you're not careful with the data. So I still think we need some kind of a, I don't know, just a guidance doc to help people think through these issues so that they understand why some of this might be problematic, more problematic than they think at first glance.
Yeah, coming from a cybersecurity aspect of it, really, there's a lot of information that you'd think would be pretty inane and can trace back to one person in a large population, even just from small details that you might not think would identify someone. But I think that's really good to have an ethics document and also add these ethics to the metrics themselves. That might be something to get started here pretty soon as we're measuring these from, our big thing for badging is that we're making sure that these people are measuring these metrics themselves. And that one of the things that is kind of a +1 for the, or extra plus is that they, if they're displaying anonymized demographics on their site about something like, this is kind of the people that came to our event, and if it's bad, it shows bad. If it's good, it shows good. But I think an ethics document is, a really good idea.
And maybe even some quantitative guidelines, like if you're in a group that's less than 15% or 10% of the participants, that you're just going to be lumped in your answers will not be like recorded as a percentage so that it really effectively identifies you depending on the size of the event.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that would really limit the candor of the answers that you would get if I would be concerned about that. And of course, I wouldn't, because a lot of people look like me, but at these events, but others certainly would be.
So I have a thought on this. I think this is a kind of a big question, because if we're gonna be using CHAOSS to provide a badge with demographics, whether it's speaker or attendee demographics, if an event is capturing those demographics and they're doing a really bad job at it, but they are in fact capturing it and displaying it, it's quite possible that the review would say, yeah, congratulations, you're doing it, here's a badge, when in fact they're doing it, but they're doing a horrible job in terms of attending to PII. So my question, maybe for other people on the call, is there a way that we in the review process can say, we understand that you as an event are capturing this demographic information, and as an event you're attending to the ethics associated with the capturing of this data? Like, it's hard for us to define event by event what those ethical concerns are, but just asking that they're attentive to that issue. I'm trying to think of where to put this in the process.
Probably like somebody suggested, is some ethics guidelines. We don't have to fully develop it, but I think we've identified a couple of issues here. And for example, I think speaker demographics is already public information in most cases. So I don't think that's a PII issue. It's participant demographics, where really I think the value of not identifying individuals by accident needs to be in there. I hear pretty clearly the ethic, or the value of not identifying individuals by asking them for too specific of a location is important. And those are the two that kind of jumped out from the conversation to me.
Okay.
The way I think about it, a lot of the things we're measuring are things that are public facing as well. Things that you can see when you go to the website are the kind of things we're looking for. So maybe I was thinking we could add a check that is worth the points it's worth. If before we get anything kind of ethics document started, I can add a kind of an emergency check at the bottom of each demographic section saying there is something about respect to PII and the ethical use of the demographics. I'm thinking eventually we can probably have some kind of system where if the ethics aren't being followed, then they don't get any of those checkboxes. But for now, for the launch, I think we'd have to go with an extra line item for now. But
I feel like something as simple as suggesting a data use blurb, like it's like something similar to what the Moral Lab has. Like, there's always some sort of privacy. This is how your data is going to be used in the system, even if it's really lightweight. Just have relative intentions and usage, and maybe a couple caveats with, if our sample is less than 10, we won't show it. But just, I don't know, I think that's a simple suggestion that we can make, while kind of, not to say that there's any liability here, but at least it encourages better practices up front. If they're going to be collecting any sort of PII, then they should be encouraged to have some sort of usage documentation.
I wonder if there's already, I mean, this obviously is a problem that lots of groups face, anybody that collects data. Is there a nonprofit out there somewhere that's already put together sort of a best practices guide that we could just link to from a temporary standpoint? Like, I feel like maybe we're reinventing the wheel here the more I think about.
On the Augur website for our privacy statement, we've basically edited the Free Software Foundation's privacy statement, which is significantly longer than anything that we've talked about here. But it addresses the questions that we have.
But it's not, I think that's two separate things.
Yeah.
One, the privacy policy is how we treat your data, but that's
Mhm.
not what we're talking about in the badging program. We're talking about other people gathering data and us wanting to encourage them to do it in an ethical way using best
Right.
practices.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean? I think
Yeah,
they're
I
two
do.
completely separate
Right.
things.
Yeah. We're not stating the policy for everybody that uses it.
I agree with that, but I think if we don't have something to share in terms of best practices, then we can also say, here's an example of one that we've written. So I think that, Don, to your point, it isn't the same thing, but having an example to point to in the interim could be helpful.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
Is this actually a metric as well? The ethical capture of information?
Maybe. I don't know.
I mean, when we start thinking about like code of conduct is like having a code of conduct is a metric. So is following ethical data capture, does that become a metric as well? And if so, can we solve part of our problem here by maybe defining that metric within D&I?
I think the metric could be whether they have a data policy.
So
I
for
still
the
think privacy policy is different than ethical
Data use,
considerations for
yeah.
how they use the data.
Mhm.
I think you need both, but I think that they're two different things. One is what you do with the data once you have it, and that's kind of a privacy standpoint. And the other is, are you analyzing it in ways that is ethical? Do you see what I mean?
I do.
They're
I
both
do.
really important. I'm not saying either one's less important. They're both really important. I just think they're two separate but related things that people tend to kind of merge together.
Okay, so can I ask one question? It would kind of be a procedural question in the badging. Do you think from when an organization is requesting a badge, that the review could simply point them to a site that we don't have yet about the ethical considerations of data and say, we understand that you're capturing these demographics. We encourage you strongly to take a look at this site that we don't have yet, or document that we don't have yet? Or do we ask for their statement of ethical use? See what I'm saying? One is asking them for information that they've considered ethical use of data. That's the latter. The former is we just simply point them to the ethical use of data. Does that make sense?
We could do both. I mean, we do ask, we do kind of have this conflict of interest policy with reviewers, so it's something similar to that, I think, where they could talk about like they'll have to check a box that talks about their ethical use, but they will also have something that they talk about, like you said. It sounds like a good idea.
I also think so. I obviously have very strong opinions about this, but I also don't think that this should be any kind of a gate to getting this out the door in the way that it is now. I'm talking about this more from a future improvement standpoint, so I don't want anybody to think that I'm saying we can't possibly do this until we sort out this big thing that nobody quite knows what to do with. I guess I'm just suggesting that as an area that we can improve, because I think we need the ethical statement for other reasons too, not just the badging.
Yeah.
So could I make the following proposition then? In an effort to continue the badging program, we do a search to try to find an ethical use of data statement that's published and we agree on. And as part of the review process, the reviewer can simply say, hey, thank you for doing this demographic work. Here's a link to a statement. We recommend that you continue to reflect on this statement. And then in the future, if we have a metric, as Kevin had pointed out, about the ethical use of data, we could start kind of expanding that a little bit more, where we actually ask people just to describe their ethical use of the data that they're collecting, not just recommending they think about it, but actually telling them to describe it. Would that fit with people? So now we have to find this statement that we don't know where it
I
is.
just have to think there's some nonprofit somewhere that has
I
a
agree.
good, like, best practices and ethical data collection statement
Yeah.
somewhere.
Totally agreed.
Found like 20 in a rough search, so there's almost like too much, but there's definitely prior art.
Okay, cool.
Sophia,
So pick
could
a couple
drop
you
them?
like
Yeah.
and send them to the mailing list, and we can bike shed on them there.
Perfect. Okay, cool. That was a great discussion. Thank you. All right. So, all right. So we're moving on. We have a new video. Did you see Elizabeth released a video today? It's awesome.
That looked fantastic. She looked like a professional, like, newscaster in a, like, professional studio.
I
It
was
looked
absolutely
great.
blown away. Yeah. And so I was super happy. If you haven't had a chance to watch it, it's not long at all. And it's just about the latest metrics release. It was awesome. Totally awesome. We had talked about developing, or she had talked about developing some other videos, perhaps for the working groups, not necessarily the metrics for the working group, but videos describing what's going on in the working groups, also for the software, and also for the CHAOSS project as a whole, not just about the release. I don't know if people have thoughts on any other videos that might improve transparency for the project or provide insight for folks.
Short videos on each metric, like a 30-second to minute and 30-second video. Just, hey, this metric measures this. Could be cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love the idea of short videos. I think they're really, some people find them a lot more accessible than big chunks of text. And I think it's good for us
Actually
to
watch them.
do more of those. Yeah. And just as a reminder, anyone can record a short video about something that you think is really interesting in the CHAOSS project and do a blog post about it. It's super easy.
This came up in the board meeting.
Hint.
All right, cool. Thank you. Oh, geez. We're okay. So, Josh Karup, do you want to give us an update on how the handbook's going?
Yeah, sure. So I basically worked on the terminology section inside the handbook community handbook. So I worked on the CHAOSS specific terms, the general committee terms, the working groups terms, and also the mentorship. So it went pretty well. So I would be working on the terminology usage and the finally jumping onto the contribution guidelines. So for this specific week. So I would be working on, more on the, like how one can get involved as a designer or a marketer or a documentator. So like I would be separating out all these things and would be writing in the community handbook. And other thing I proposed within the community handbook was the CHAOSS history. So since like community handbook is open to the newcomers as well as the existing community members. So I think like it would be interesting fact for everyone who goes and reads about the community handbook and everyone knows about the history behind the CHAOSS project. So I proposed this idea specifically when we had a previous mentors call. So I think like Gaurav might be taking this overhead. So if they have any idea on this thing.
I think it's a really good idea to document the history of the CHAOSS project, at least at a very high level with here are the milestones, here are the things that led up to the creation. Here's the first CHAOSScon, here's the first working group created. A nice timeline is a good idea. So I
Personally,
think
I would find that particularly useful because a lot of times that comes up a lot, that question. So how did the CHAOSS project start? And it's really nice to be able, if I had like one place where I could just grab those couple of key dates from, I think that would be really useful.
So the question I think we wanted to discuss today is how can we collect this information? That's why it's on the agenda today.
Oh, I can always help.
I personally suggested maybe a short interview with the core community members, like maybe 15 or 20 minutes interview, talking about how they got engaged and how the CHAOSS project started and what was their contribution. Something like this way, so we can plan out the things.
Pairing that with what we just talked about, writing a little blog post or recording a short video, if you send out the questions, maybe we can record them and even upload them to our blog post.
We also did that podcast that where we talked a lot about the kind of didn't we talk about kind of the history of CHAOSS on one of the podcasts too? That might
I think
be
it's the first episode.
Hello
might be
world,
good
I
to link
guess.
to from the community handbook too.
Okay, so the last thing, anything else on that? The last thing on the list was about chaos attribution and how much we want to talk about this or pursue this. So, Daniel, you had that link as well with Community Bridge. Was that right? Could you share that real quickly?
Yeah, maybe I can share my screen. Oh, I cannot share my screen.
I can't seem to track it down.
Okay. So, yeah, the discussion here is about, so if you open, yeah, well, if I maybe you can give me some rights to permissions.
Yeah, I'll do that right now.
Thank you.
Oh, I can't. Kevin, can you give Daniel screen share rights? Losing my mind on this. 3 minutes.
Well, no worries, that's okay.
I'll share my screen real quickly.
Yeah, so
there we go.
In that link, you have a massive amount of projects from the Linux Foundation or that are part of the Linux Foundation. So you can scroll down. If you click in any of them, go for maybe they don't have. Can you go back and choose another one maybe?
I couldn't find them on there.
Oh, those are beta. Probably the beta ones are not. Like
okay.
The Foundation. Go for the first one maybe.
Okay.
Okay, and go for
whatever.
So what they're presenting is kind of a dashboard and with a bunch of metrics and so on, which are well, kind of related to the metrics that we have. But then if you go to the left side, you see that there is a menu there where you see source control, pull request, etc. So the summary is this page. If you click, for instance, in pull request efficiency, just any random, or go to any of them, go for any of them. What we see here is a dashboard which is based in CHAOSS. Let me take a bit of charge. If you have a look at this link that I'm sharing now with you, basically this is Grimoire Lab Sigils. You can see on the right the dashboard, and it's exactly the same. So it seems that the Linux Foundation is using CHAOSS technology to analyze a massive amount of projects, which is great. So they are reusing our technology, but I think it's worth asking them to have certain attribution somewhere for the CHAOSS project. So I don't know what you think, if this is fair or if this is worth asking. And then as far as my understanding, this is happening for the Linux kernel report for Crehit. And someone else wrote something, maybe in Cauldron, was this one? Yeah, Cauldron.io. So it's about asking for the proper attribution. And as we are under the Linux Foundation, so I guess we both can take advantage of this, like the Linux Foundation is using CHAOSS technology. CHAOSS technology is being used by the Linux Foundation. So this is the...
What are people's thoughts on this?
Yeah. I mean, I think there are component, and I think there are organizations that are using chaos metrics within the project. I think our concern would be people outside the project who, I mean, we know that Grimoire Lab and Augur reference chaos. We know that a lot of the companies that are participating reference that they use chaos metrics. I think any public use of the chaos organization or logo should be something that has to be approved through some process beyond the scope of where it's currently used, I think. I mean, don't we want to have some kind of control of our brand?
Well, we're talking about the Linux Foundation right now, and the
Yeah.
Linux Foundation owns the Chaos trademark, so they can certainly use it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
In ways that they decide. I mean, because this
Right,
conversation is about
course.
whether we should ask the Linux Foundation to give us attribution when they use chaos
Oh,
metric. And I
yeah.
think
And
that
technology.
I think that's
Yeah.
totally fair. I mean, I think I would go back to them with a proposal that just says, hey, at the bottom of each page, can you put something like, project name from the chaos, I don't know, project name from the chaos project used to develop this metric or something with a link to
Yeah.
the chaos project. I would go back to them with a specific proposal of what you think that should look like, just to
That
make
sounds
the
like
conversation
the right
easier.
proposal.
Something
No,
like
that was way
forward.
too wordy. Someone who's better
Well,
at words
yeah.
should do that.
The usual forward by chaos should be all right, I guess, with a
Yeah.
link then to chaos.
Yeah. Yeah, just
I mean,
something
we-
simple that basically has the project name, chaos, and the fact that
I just put
is using it.
in the minutes, I just put like powered by Grimoire Lab, the chaos project.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So we are 2 minutes past. I'm glad that you brought that up, Daniel, because I do think it's important as well.
I think it's totally fair to ask that.
Okay, cool. I'll draft something maybe for next week and think about how just the best way to make that approach.
One suggestion on that, can we have a page whereby we track who is using chaos metric so that we have a impact factor, we can assess that chaos is being used by these many. This will give us an assessment.
That gets to be can we table this? We can pick this discussion up next week. We're at 52, so we're a little bit over, unless somebody has a
We'll say
burning
that all
comment.
CNCF projects try to have an adopters file, which is people who are using their stuff. So it's pretty common within Linux Foundation.
Okay.
It's not like we're asking for anything novel, is what I hear.
Just to add up before we close, we can also make a BIP citation for all of the metrics or things so that people can, citing it, also can reference it and give us some.
Got it. So a citation for each piece of software and metric.
Yeah, it's easy to reference it, and it also counts for impact factor.
Cool. All right, everybody. Thanks for sticking around 3 extra minutes. It's very good to see everyone. Till the next working group or next week or whatever.
Yeah, perfect.
Bye,
everybody.
Bye. Bye, y'all.
Bye.